Hmm.
Hello, Dee. Oh, God. I guess Dee was here, but she's not here anymore. So hopefully she'll be back very soon. Well, this is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. My last stream was 3 weeks ago. And as many of you know, just after my stream 3 weeks ago, my wife Bonnie fell in the closet. And the fall left her with a broken hip. She immediately went to the hospital, had surgery on Wednesday, and she's been recovering ever since. Okay, I've got some static on here. Okay, my static is gone. It was coming from D. So I don't know what that was about, but I muted her microphone at this point. I'm going to unmute her again and see if the static is still there. Nope. I'm being joined by Dee Pierce of Around the World with Dee and Friends, who often joins my show. Hello, Dee.
Hello.
I'm very glad you're here to welcome me back. Hey, thank you. So as I was saying, Bonnie was left with a broken hip after that fall.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had 3 interesting weeks here, to say the least, during which I haven't had very much time to stream. But Bonnie is now on the road to recovery and is now sitting next to me on the couch. Hello, honey.
Hi.
That's good to hear, Bonnie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, she's now in good spirits. She still has some pain from time to time, but I've got something that's effective in treating that. So the prognosis for her recovery is very good. She's getting occupational therapy and physical therapy, okay, as well. And I think that she's well on the road, okay, to recovery. But from hip fractures, recovery is very slow.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky in that she had a clean break. It wasn't anything that required a replacement of the hip or anything like that. Okay, they put titanium rod in and a screw as well.
Okay.
And I think the chances are pretty good to have a full recovery in the sense that she'll be able to do the things that she was able to do before the fall. So
that's
we're very
great.
Hopeful about that. She's been able in the last few days to help me around the house, which has allowed me to free up some time, which is why I could come back here tonight. I'm very happy to be back. I don't know if I'll be doing my regular schedule. I will try to do as much as I can.
Right.
As many of you know, my schedule is I have a long show on Tuesday, and this is Tuesday. So this is a long show. Okay, and then I have 3 short shows throughout the day on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I don't know how many of those I'm going to be able to do.
Mhm.
When I have evening short shows, I usually do them at 8 o'clock, and then Dee goes on at 9,
Yes.
her show. So I'll be trying to make as many of the short shows as I can, but I don't know whether I'll have enough free time to do them.
Mhm.
So thank you for coming back to my short show. I see that Andy Candy is here.
Oh, good.
Okay, it's a pleasure to see you, Andy.
Yes, it is. It's very nice. It's always nice to see Auntie Candy.
Yes, or actually to see April.
Yes, April.
Okay, very nice to see you, April. And I think there's somebody else here too, but that person has yet to greet us. So, okay, let us get on with it. This is going to be a long show because it's mainly focused on the work of Pepe Escobar. And over the last month, I think Pepe has been very, very busy with excellent stuff. The last thing of his that we covered was something he did on March the 1st, uh, which was called The Global South Converges to Multipolar Moscow. We did not get a chance on the 5th, even though that was our last stream, to cover his piece called Global South Youth Flocks to Isolated Russia, with the isolated in quotes. This is a pretty short piece, but a very interesting one. And so I'm going to go to that, okay, right now. If you'll bear with me just a moment, I do want to share this on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, I shared around some groups.
Oh, thank you very much, Dee.
You're welcome.
And let's see what we got here. Okay, thank you. It looks like I've got something of a Facebook audience here, so thank you very much. And I guess I'm just going to share this to feed. And get rid of any possible echoes from Facebook. Steve is here. Hello, Steve. Great to see you.
Yes. Hello, Steve. Very good to see you.
And we will get right to the first article from Pepe about, again, Global South youth flocks to isolated Russia, with the isolated in quotes. And this was originally did not appear, okay, in at the UNZ review, but they pick up things from Strategic Culture Foundation. I don't usually pick up the work at Strategic Culture Foundation because when I share it here, it creates a problem for Facebook. And since I like to share things on Facebook, also I picked it up somewhere else. Okay, the UNC review carries most of Pepe's stuff, except for that appears in the Cradle. We are going to do one of his Cradle articles tonight too. So let's go to the Global South Youth piece. You should be, I guess you're not seeing it on your screen quite yet.
No.
So let me get that up there. There we go. You should be seeing it now.
Yes, we do.
We do see it now. It's a very nice photo of youth from many, many countries, including countries in the British Empire, which is kind of interesting. But, oh, and there's evidently youth from Israel there too. Interesting. By any metric, the World Youth Festival, running in the Syria's federal territory, which is at Sochi in southern Russia, which is the resort area in Russia, on March 1st to 7th is a stunning achievement, says Pepe Escobar, a sort of special cultural operation, SEO, encompassing the young global South. It starts with the incomparable setting, the 2014 Olympics Park of Science and Art, nested between snowy mountains and the Black Sea. All the way to the stars of the show, over 20,000 young leaders from over 180 nations, Russians and mostly Asians, Africans and Latin Americans, as well as assorted dissidents from the sanctions-obsessed Western, quote, garden, unquote, as Borrell from Germany characterized it. He characterized the collective West as the garden and the rest of the world as the jungle. So that was the referent there from Pepe Escobar. Among them are scores of educators, PhDs, public sector or culture activists, charity volunteers, athletes, young entrepreneurs, scientists, citizen journalists, as well as teenagers from 14 to 17. For the first time, the focus of a special program, quote, together into the future. These are the generations that will be building our common future, says Pepe. President Putin is once again quite sharp. He emphasized how a clear distinction applies between citizens of the world, including the global north, and the intolerant, extremely aggressive Western plutocracy. A nice distinction, I think. Russia, a multinational, multicultural civilization state, by principle, welcomes all citizens of the world. Gee, I once thought the United States did that. The World Youth Festival 2024, taking place 7 years after the last one, renews a tradition that harks back to the 1957 World Festival of Youth and Students, when the USSR welcomed everyone on both sides of the Iron Curtain during the Cold War. The idea, I'd forgotten about that, by the way. I used to know there was a youth festival in 1957, but this article reminds me of that. The idea of an open platform for young, committed, very organized people attracted by Russian conservative family values permeates the whole festival. Sharp contrast to the artificial, cancel culture obsessed, quote, open society, unquote, PR, incessantly sold by the usual hegemonic foundations. This, of course, is a reference to the Open Society Foundation, supported by George Soros, and what used to be his fortune, but 18 billion of that fortune was turned over to the Open Society Foundations. Each day at the festival is dedicated to a main theme, to go back to the article. For instance, March 2nd was on, quote, responsibility for the fate of the world. March 3rd was for, quote, unity and cooperation among nations, unquote. March 4th was for, quote, a world of opportunities for everyone. No less than 300,000 youngsters from around the world applied to come to the festival. So obviously to select a little over 20,000 was quite a feat. After the festival, 2,000 foreign participants will travel to 30 Russian cities for cultural exchange. exactly what Comrade Xi Jinping defines as, quote, people to people's exchanges, unquote. Interesting, he used the word comrade here. Putin and Xi Jinping, certainly comrades, but they're not comrades in communism, as used to be the case when the USSR people and the Chinese people got together in the old days. It's no wonder the festival organizers Rosmolodezh, the Russian Federal Agency for Youth Affairs, call it, quote, the largest youth event in the world. Well, I could imagine. Director Ksenia Razueva noted, quote, we are destroying the myth that Russia is isolated, unquote. I guess I'd have to admit they are destroying that myth. The pitfalls of, quote, asynchronous multipolarity, unquote. The festival is all about networking among young groups, intercultural business ties, ranging from sustainable. Hang on just a second. I am going to take this. Hey, Lana?
Hey there.
I'm streaming right now.
You are? Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Talk to you
All
later.
right, bye.
That, okay, it was Lana Dell, who evidently didn't know I was streaming tonight. So, the festival is all about networking among youth groups, intercultural business ties, ranging from a sustainable community level to larger geopolitical level. I had a huge honor and responsibility to address a truly multi-global South audience at the Belgorod Oblast Pavilion, invited by the Russia Knowledge Foundation, alongside a consultant from Hyderabad, India. The Q&A session was terrific. Ultra sharp questions from Iran to Serbia, from Brazil to India, from Palestine to Donbass. A true microcosm of the multicultural young global South, eager to know everything about the current geopolitical great game, as well as how national governments can facilitate international cultural and scientific cooperation among young people. The Valdai Club is running a particularly attractive daily program at the Forum, The World in 2040. On Sunday, a workshop, for instance, focused on, quote, the future of a multipolar world, unquote, anchored by the excellent Andrei Sushentsov, Dean of the School of International Relations at MGIMO, arguably the best international relations school on the planet. It might be arguably. I have no reason to doubt that, but people from the Woodrow Wilson School of International Relations at Princeton University may have some reason to doubt that. Okay. But considering what's been going on in foreign policy these days and what the people from these schools are turning out, it may be that our friend Pepe Escobar is correct about that. Okay, the discussion on, quote, asynchronous multipolarity was particularly useful to the audience. A solid Chinese presence, mostly PhDs, and elicited ultra-sharp questions by researchers from Serbia, South Ossetia, Transnistria, and of course, China. Shrikant Kandapalli, a professor at China Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, elaborated on the key concept of, quote, Asian multipolarity, unquote, the many Asias within Asia, something that totally baffles simplistic Western categorizations. After the session, we had an excellent exchange about it, yet nothing at the forum compares to going from room to packed room, getting a glimpse of the in-depth discussions, and then wandering the pavilions in total networking mode. I was approached by everyone from Sudan to Ecuador, from New Guinea to a group of Brazilians from Indonesians to an official of the Communist Party of the United States. And then there's the special prize, the stands of the several Russian republics. That's when you get the chance to be immersed in a Yamal tea ritual, to receive firsthand information on the Nenets Autonomous Region, or to discuss the procedure to embark on a trip in a nuclear icebreaker in the Northern Sea Route or Arctic Silk Road, the connectivity channel of the future. Once again, multipolar Russia in effect. Now compare this peaceful, pan-global gathering focused on all forms of sustainable community programs, drenched in hopes and dreams, to NATO launching a 2-week massive warmongering exercise dubbed, quote, Nordic Response 2024, unquote, carried out by Finland, Norway, and newcomer Sweden, less than 500 kilometers away from the Russian borders. Well, that little article was quite a jaunt for us, taking us into whole new worlds that we never hear about, which is, by the way, why I love the journalism of Pepe Escobar so much. And I hope that with the various articles I've been covering here over the last couple of months, that you enjoy his stuff, okay, as much as I do. It presents really a variety of perspectives and a variety of facts about the Eurasian region, which is now coming together. The peoples of the world island coming together. Not yet Europe, of course, but parts of Eastern Europe and lots, okay, of Asia. Any comments on that?
Yes, I enjoy reading him as well. He's provides a unique perspective on things, and like what you read, he provided the perspective of the multipolarity and what they're doing and what their goals are, and I mean that's the future. That's the future.
That's the future, and all of the varied actors
Yes.
who are combining in this, who are discussing things and creating new visions of the world, okay, for themselves. And we don't hear about this in the Western press at all.
We hear nothing really.
Andy asks, Joe, did you get to see the Danny Haifong show? She says the Danny show here. It's Danny Haifong with Low Key. It was exhilarating, IMHO. Julian is safe, okay, from extradition for now. No, I did not get a chance to see it. I'm sorry, Andy, but right after you suggested it, which was like 3 weeks ago, I was totally immersed in, the troubles we were having here. And I paid attention to very few things. I apologize. Steve Wolfman says, hi, Doc. Welcome back. I hope Bonnie is doing well. How are you doing, Bonnie?
Really great with your help.
Thanks, honey. Andy says, be back later. Someone is knocking. Okay. Tell him not to knock during my streams. Okay. Okay, I'm going to get on to the next of the Pepe pieces right now. This one is called, okay, the one I just read was on March 5th. The next piece, covered by the UNZ outlet, is from March 12th, 2024. It's a much longer piece. It's called Confident Dragon lays out a modernization roadmap. And of course, that's another Pepe Escobar piece, as we've been saying. I'm going to also share this one. The confident dragon, of course, is China. And Pepe wrote this at Strategic Culture Foundation on March the 12th, 2024. And again, I don't go directly to Strategic Culture Foundation for this, because if I did, I would not be able to stream to Facebook. So, as Project Ukraine goes down the drain of history, Project Taiwan will go on overdrive. Forever wars never die. That's the caption, okay, on the photo you're seeing, on the graphic you're seeing from Pepe. This is the year of the wooden dragon, according to China's classic Wuxing, quote, 5 elements, unquote, culture. The dragon, one of the 12 signs of the Chinese zodiac, is a symbol of power, nobility, and intelligence. Wood adds growth, development, and prosperity. That's interesting. Call it a summary where China is heading in 2024. The second session of the 14th National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC, was finalized on Sunday in Beijing. The wider world should know that within the framework of grassroots democracy, with Chinese characteristics, an extremely complex and fascinating phenomenon, the importance of the CPPCC is paramount. The CPPCC channels wide-ranging expectations of the average Chinese to the decision level and actually advises the central government on a vast range of issues, from everyday living to high-quality development strategies. This year, most of the discussion focused on how to drive China's modernization even faster. This being China, concepts like flowers were blooming all around the spectrum, such as, quote, new quality productive forces, deepening reform, unquote. Quote again, high standard opening up, and a fabulous new one, quote, major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics, unquote. As the Global Times emphasized, quote, 2024 is not only a critical year for achieving the goals of the 14th five-year plan, unquote, but also a key year for achieving the transition to high-quality development of the economy, unquote. Next session is called Betting on Strategic Investments. So let's start with Chinese Premier Li Qiang's first, quote, work report, unquote, delivered a week ago, which opened the annual session of the National People's Congress. So this is Pepe covering the CPPCC conference. Okay, so last we heard from him, week before that, he was covering the youth conference. Now he's covering the CPPCC conference. The key takeaway he gives us: Beijing will be pursuing the same economic targets as in 2023. That translates as 5% annual growth. Of course, not extremely high annual growth for China, but extremely high annual growth for any country in the collective West. Our own growth, of course, as we know, is nowhere near that. What is it? Between 2.5% and 3%, of course, and we're quite happy with that. Of course, deflationary risks, a downturn in the real estate market, and somewhat shaky business confidence simply won't vanish. Li was quite realistic, emphasizing Beijing is, quote, keenly aware, unquote, of the challenges ahead. Quote, achieving this year's targets will not be easy, unquote. And he added, quote, global economic growth lacks steam and the regional hotspot issues keep erupting. This has made China's external environment more complex, severe, and uncertain, unquote. Beijing's strategy remains focused on a, quote, proactive fiscal policy and prudent monetary policy, unquote. In a nutshell, the song remains the same. There won't be, quote, stimulus, unquote, of any kind. Deeper answers should be found in the work report/budget released by the National Development Reform Commission. The focus will be on structural change via extra funds to science, technology, education, national defense, agriculture. Translation: China bets on strategic investment, the key for a high-quality economic transition. In practice, Beijing will be heavily invested in modernizing industry and developing, quote, new quality productive forces, unquote, such as new energy vehicles, biomanufacturing, and commercial space flight. Where are you hearing this? In Western press outlets. Where are you getting this kind of information? This is essential information for us to have. And if not for Pepe and a few others, we would be ignorant of it. Science Minister Yin Hejian made it clear there was an 8.1 increase in national investment in research and development in 2023. He wants more, and he will get it. R&D spending will grow by 10% to a total of 370.8 billion won in 2024. A 10% increase in R&D is massive. When was the last time the United States had a 10% increase in R&D funds? I mean, I don't even know. I can't even remember we did anything like that. The mantra is, quote, self-reliance, unquote, on all fronts, from chip making to AI. A no-holds-barred tech war is on, and China is totally focused to counter, quote, tech containment from the hegemon, that's us, of course, as much as its ultimate goal is to wrest tech supremacy from its prime competitor. Beijing simply cannot allow itself to be vulnerable to U.S.-imposed tech choke points and supply chain disruptions. By the way, when is the United States going to do the same thing with respect to its economic policy? When are we not going to allow ourselves to be vulnerable to foreign imposed tech choke points and supply chain disruptions? What was the cause of the recent inflation we had? What was the most important cause? It was supply chain disruptions, particularly supply chain disruptions from China. Why have we allowed ourselves to get into that position? Neoliberalism. That is why. Going on with Pepe's article. So short-term economic problems will not be causing sleepless nights. The Beijing leadership is always looking ahead, focusing on long-term challenges. What is our leadership doing? Why is our leadership so unimaginative, so poor, so short-term oriented? What is wrong with these people? We know that from Trump and Biden, we will get nothing more than what we've gotten now. A blindness to change going on in the rest of the world. No new ideas. Who is running for president who will bring some new ideas to the table? I really wonder. I have some hunches, but I genuinely wonder. Learning lessons from the Donbass battlefield. Beijing will continue to steer the economic development of Hong Kong and Macau and invest even more in the crucial Greater Bay Area, which is the premier southern China high-tech services and finance hub. Taiwan, of course, was central to the work report. Beijing fiercely opposes, quote, external interference, unquote, code for hegemon tactics. That will become even trickier in May when William Lai Ching-te, who flirts with independence, becomes president. He means president in Taiwan, of course. On defense, there will be only a 7.2% increase in 2024, which is peanuts compared to the hegemon's defense budget, now approaching $900 billion. China stands as 238 billion, even as China's nominal GDP is approaching the United States. Yes, it's what China's spending is peanuts compared to what we're spending, but arguably, relative to its purposes, China is getting far more bang for the buck because China's 238 billion, I think, is going to be ample for China to defend itself, okay, and its interests, okay, in Asia, and to counter whatever we have to offer in the way of threats to break up or break down China or contain China. Here we have this $900 billion that we're spending, and what is it for? And how is the $900 billion useful? We've already seen that in Ukraine it hasn't been very useful. Not that we should have been in Ukraine in the first place. A great deal of China's defense budget will go for emerging tech, considering the immensely valuable lessons the PLA, that's the People's Liberation Army, is learning out of the Donbass battlefield, as well as the deep interactions part of the Russia-China strategic partnership. That brings us to diplomacy. China will continue to be firmly positioned as a champion of the global South. That was made explicit by Foreign Minister Wang Yi in a press conference on the sidelines of the National People's Congress. Wang Yi's priorities to, quote, maintain stable relations with major powers, join hands with its neighboring countries for progress, and strive for revitalization with the global South, unquote. Wang Yi once again stressed that Beijing favors an, quote, equal and orderly, unquote, multipolar world, and, quote, inclusive economic globalization. And of course, he could not allow U.S. Secretary of State Little Blinken, always out of his depth, to get away with his latest, quote, a recipe, unquote, a nice drive-by by Pepe here. Quote, it is impermissible that those with the bigger fist have the final say, and it is definitely unacceptable that certain countries must be at the table while others can only be on the menu, unquote. Very nicely put here, okay, by Pepe, but really, it's essential that we learn here at home to contrast the talents, the imagination, the vision of our pygmy leaders with people such as Wang Yi. Why don't we have leaders such as Wang Yi? Why do we have U.S. Secretary of State Little Blinken? What is that about? We know what's it about. We know it's about dumping the corruption, don't we? Anyway, the Belt and Road Initiative is a global accelerator, the BRI. That's the Belt and Road Initiative. Crucially, Wang Yi re-emphasized the drive for, quote, high quality, unquote, cooperation within the BRI framework. He identified BRI as, quote, an engine for the common development of all countries and an accelerator for the modernization of the whole world, unquote. Wang Yi actually said he's hopeful about the emergence of a, quote, global South movement in global governance, in which China and BRI play an essential part. Li Qiang's work report, incidentally, had only one paragraph on BRI, but then we find this nugget as Li refers to the new international land-sea trade corridor, which links China's landlocked southwest with the eastern seaboard of China via Guangxi province. Translation, BRI will be focused on opening new economic roads for China's less developed regions, diversifying from the previous emphasis on Xinjiang. Dr. Wei Wansong is a member of the CPPCC and also the Chinese Peasants and Workers' Democratic Party, which happens to be one of the 8 non-CCP parties in Chinese politics. Very few outside of China know about this. He offered some fascinating comments on BRI to Fangmian News, and also stressed the need to tell China's story well, unquote, to avoid, quote, conflicts and incidents, unquote, along the Belt and Road Initiative, or that is the BRI Road. For that, Wei suggests the need to use, unquote, international language, unquote, in telling these stories. That implies using English. As for what Wang Yi said in his press conference, in fact, that was discussed in detail at the closed-door Central Conference on Foreign Affairs work in late 2023. It was established that China faced, quote, strategic opportunities, unquote, to raise its international influence, appeal, and power, unquote, despite, quote, high winds and choppy waters, unquote. The key takeaway, the narrative war between China and the hegemon will be pitiless. Beijing is confident it's capable of offering stability, investment, connectivity, and sound diplomacy to the whole global South instead of forever wars. That is reflected, for instance, by Ma Jinmin, the Chinese Foreign Ministry's legal advisor, telling the International Court of Justice that the Palestinians have the right to armed resistance when it comes to fighting the colonial, racist apartheid state of Israel. Therefore, Hamas cannot be defined as a terrorist organization. I think we've been learning that lesson over a period of months as we covered the Israel-Palestine conflict on DSK around the world with Dean Friend show. This is the overwhelming position across the lands of Islam and across the majority of the global South, linking Beijing with fellow BRICS member Brazil and President Lula, who compared the genocide in Gaza to the Nazi genocide in World War II, something that, by the way, has infuriated the Israelis, as we know. How to resist collective West sanctions, going on with Pepe's article. The two sessions did reflect Beijing's full understanding that hegemon containment and destabilization tactics remain the biggest challenge to China's peaceful rise. But simultaneously, it reflected Chinese confidence on its global diplomatic clout as a force for peace, stability, and economic development. It's an extremely sensitive balance that only the Middle Kingdom seems capable of pulling off. Then there's the Trump factor. Oh, boy. A very wide-ranging article by Pepe here. Economist Ding Yifan, a former deputy director of the World Development Institute, part of the State Council's Development Research Center, is one among those who's aware China's learning key lessons from Russia on how to resist collective West sanctions, which will be inevitable against China, especially if Trump is back at the White House. That brings us to the absolute key issue being discussed in Moscow within the Russian-China partnership and soon among the BRICS, alternative settlement payments to the U.S. dollar, increasing trade among, quote, friendly nations, unquote, and controls on capital flight. Nearly all Russia-China trade is now in yuan and rubles. As much as Russian trade with the EU fell by 68% in 2023, trade with Asia rose by 5.6%, with new landmarks reached with China, $240 billion, and India, $65 billion, and 84% of Russia's total energy exports going to, quote, friendly countries, unquote, which, by the way, gives the friendly countries a chance to profit because, of course, the world can't go without the Russian oil. And so, since there are sanctions on Russia, cannot buy it on Russia, so it buys the oil from other friendly countries, of course, and therefore pays much more for the oil and for the gas. The two sessions did not get into detail on some extremely thorny geopolitical issues. For instance, India's version of multipolarity, considering New Delhi's unresolved love affair with Washington, is quite different from China's. Everyone knows, and no one more than the Russians, that within BRICS 10, the biggest strategic issue is how to accommodate the perpetual tension between India and China. So glad that Pepe mentioned that. It's so important to be continuously aware of that because it's a real issue with respect to the progress of BRICS and realizing its international vision. Going on with the article, what's clear even behind the fog of goodwill enveloping the two sessions is that Beijing is fully aware of how the hegemon is deliberately already crossing a key Chinese red line, officially stationing, quote, permanent troops, unquote, in Taiwan. Everybody remember, I'm just interjecting here, everybody remember, according to international law and recognition all through the international system, including formal recognition by the United States, Taiwan is a part of China. How can we, the United States, station, quote, permanent troops in Taiwan and still recognize that Taiwan is a part of China? This is ridiculous. It is totally against international law. Since last year, U.S. Special Forces have been training Taiwanese in operating Black Hornet nano microdrones. 2024, U.S. military advisors are deployed full-time in Army bases on Kinmen and Penghu Islands. Those actually driving U.S. foreign policy behind the crash test dummy at the White House. That's interesting. The crash test dummy at the White House. Believe, I mean, you know who that is, the crash test dummy. Believe that even as they are powerless to handle the Houthi Ansarallah in the Red Sea, they are capable of poking the dragon. No posturing will alter the dragon's roadmap. The CPPCC's political resolution on Taiwan calls for uniting, quote, all patriotic forces, unquote, quote, deepen integration and development in various fields across the Taiwan Straits, and go all out on, quote, peaceful reunification, unquote. That will translate in practice into increased economic trade cooperation, more direct flights, more cargo ports, and logistics bases. As Project Ukraine goes down the drain of history, Project Taiwan will go on overdrive. Forever wars never die. Bring it on, says Pepe. The dragon, okay, is ready. I suspect he's quite right about it. I think the dragon is more than ready. And I think trying to contain the further development of the dragon and its development of international ties with the whole world is a fool's errand. And I'm not ready to grant that Trump is going to win the presidency. But right now, it looks like it is awfully close. And so I have to sincerely hope that whatever else he does, he short circuits this Cold War approaching hot war with China. If he doesn't, we're going to suffer a severe defeat at the hands, okay, of the Chinese, and our decline will be further accelerated. We need to turn inward and develop our own industry here. We need to make things again. We need to accelerate our R&D, and we need to accelerate all of the new areas of technology, all the development of new areas of technology. And we need to spend the money that is necessary to do so, while at the same time constraining the neoliberal forces that always want to overcharge us. Now, of course, you know, okay, since I am thoroughly MMT, you know that I don't worry about our going broke. But still, we don't want to have a situation where $900 billion a year is sunk into a defense industry that gives only, I don't know, $200 billion in value. I mean, that's ridiculous. We don't want people getting rich from the public purpose. We need to make our defense industry become lean and mean and efficient, as well as imaginative and technologically superior. That is very, very important. I doubt we're going to prove in the end to be technologically superior. Uh, if we take the combination of Russia and China, we have 1.6 billion people. We're only something like 335 billion people here. So I don't think as a collective that we're going to outthink them. But I think it would be good if we give them a run for their money, because that's going to translate into prosperity and advancement here, into a better life for everybody here, as long as it's a peaceful competition. That peaceful competition part is very, very important, of course. So let me then get to, where's my unz.com? I don't know. I got to go backwards here. Let me stop sharing this. Okay. D, any comments?
Not right now. There's a lot of noise here.
Oh, well, what did you think of that article?
That was a very good article. Very good.
It was so wide ranging, wasn't it?
Yes.
I mean, so wonderfully wide ranging and so imaginative. Okay, I love these things. And Steve Wilfriend says, Doc, what is your opinion of RFK VP pick? I don't know. I'm still studying her. Obviously, she's she's a formidable individual. I'm going to leave it there for right now and go back to the business of the day. I think that I'll be covering that sometime this week, certainly, but not really tonight. Okay, I know a few things about her. I know she is rich and wealthy. She's technologically very, very capable. I know she was Sergey Brin's wife, his spouse. So she's been running in high-flying circles for a long time. What she knows about U.S. politics and the needs of the people, I don't know. What Bobby Kennedy was saying about her today was very impressive. I did see that. Okay, I did not see the whole show. I had to do something else. Where I stopped was at the end of his introduction to her and prior to her acceptance speech, which I'm assuming was formidable, but I haven't heard it yet. So I cannot really speak to that. So let's see. So the next piece was on March 15th, 2024. You see, we're going through March. That's what this is about. And I intended at the start that this would be a very long show. I don't know if we'll get to all of it, but insofar as we do not do it, we will continue with it tomorrow. I don't know if I'll go with the 3 short show format tomorrow night. I'll go on at 8 o'clock so D can go on at 9. But what I'll probably do is have another long show, not as long as tonight, to wind up these articles, because these are terrific pieces.
Okay, well, tomorrow night, Wednesday, I'm going to be going on early. I'm going to be going on at 7 because Madeline's going to be on, and she's, in Ireland.
Okay, so should I go on at 9 then?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, because Madeline and I will be on it, earlier.
Okay, I will be happy to go on at 9 then. Okay, so let me share that. I do have that shared, so great. Okay, let me make sure I've got that shared properly, okay, or appropriately. It looks like I do. Yeah, I do. So the next piece on March 15th, 1200 word piece is called The German American Strategic Depth Clown Show. Oh, that one's going to be rich. So here we are. There's the flag of, well, it looks like the American flag, the German flag, and I'm not familiar with the other flag, but the Four Stooges saga of Bundeswehr officers plotting to blow up the Kerch Bridge in Crimea with Taurus missiles and getting away with it is a gift that keeps on giving. President Putin, in his comprehensive interview to Dmitry Kiselev for Russia One RIA Novosti, did not fail to address it. Quote, they are fantasizing, encouraging themselves, first of all. Secondly, they're trying to intimidate us. As for the Federal Republic of Germany, there are constitutional problems here. They correctly say if these tourists hit that part of the Crimean Bridge, which, of course, even according to their concepts, is Russian territory, this is a violation of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Germany, unquote. Yet it gets curiouser and curiouser. Yes, it is a violation. It would be a violation if they did that, of the Constitution of Germany, which, of course, is an anti-war constitution that they haven't given up yet. Going on, when the transcript of the Taurus leak was published by RT, everyone was able to hear Brigadier General Frank Graffe, head of operations of the German Air Force, speaking with Lieutenant Colonel Fenska from the German Space Command Air Operations on the plan to deploy Taurus systems in Ukraine. The key point is that during the plotting, these two mentioned that plans were already discussed, quote, 4 months ago, unquote, with, quote, Schneider, unquote, the successor of, quote, Wilsbach, unquote. Well, these are German names, of course, though thus it did not dawn on anyone that Kevin Schneider and Kenneth Wilsbach could instead be Americans. Yet that did not raise the eyebrows of German investigative journalist Dirk Pohlmann, who I had the pleasure to meet in Berlin years ago, and his fellow researcher Tobias Ogenbraun. They found out that the German-sounding names did identify Americans. Not only that, none less than the former and the current commanders of the U.S. Pacific Air Forces. The actually six Stooges element gets an extra boost when it is established that liver sausage Chancellor Scholz and his Total and Krieg minister, I think that's Total War in English, Minister Pistorius, learned about the Taurus plan no less than 4 months later. So here, apparently, we have a clear-cut case of top German military officers taking direct orders regarding an attack on Crimea, part of the Russian Federation, directly from American officers in the Pacific Air Forces. Folks, isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that totally ridiculous? That in itself opens the dossier to a large spectrum ranging from national treason against Germany to casus belli from the point of view of Russia. Of course, none of that is being discussed on German mainstream media, nor is it being discussed in U.S. mainstream media either. After all, the only thing that seems to disturb Brigadier General Grafe is that German media may start seriously prying on the Bundeswehr's multiple stooges methods. The only ones who actually did proper investigation were Pohlmann and Ogenbaum. It would be too much to expect from German media of the, quote, Bild, unquote, type to analyze what would be the Russian response to the multiple stooge shenanigans against Crimea, a devastating retaliation against Berlin assets. Yeah, if the Germans bombed the bridge in Crimea, what bridges in Berlin would be bombed by Russian hypersonic missiles. I mean, what kind of idiocy is this? It's so cold in Alaska. That's the title of the next section. During the jolly Bundeswehr conversation, yet another, quote, plan, unquote, is mentioned. Quote, nee, ich mein wegen der anderen Sache. No, I don't mean the other matter. Then, meinst du Alaska jetzt? You mean Alaska now. It all gets juicier when it is known that German Space Command Air Operations Center Officer Florstedt will meet none other than Schneider next Tuesday, March 19th in Alaska, and Grafe will also quote have to go back to Alaska, unquote, to explain everything all over again to Schneider, as he is, quote, new, unquote, in the post. So the question is, why Alaska? Enter American shadow play on a lot of, quote, activities in Alaska, which happen to concern none other than China. And there's more. During the conversation, still another, quote, plan, unquote, quote, Auftrag, unquote, meaning mission, quote, unquote, also surfaces bearing a not clearly understandable code name sounding like, quote, Kumalatra, unquote. What all of that tells us is that the crash test dummy administration in the White House, boy, I love that expression to describe the Biden administration, the crash test dummy administration. How wonderful. The
It's
CIA,
perfect.
yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. The CIA and the Pentagon seem to be betting in desperation on total war in the black soil of Novorossiya. For those who don't know, Novorossiya is the new part of Russia that had been conquered by Catherine the Great back in towards the end of the 18th century. It's known as Novorossiya, which is New Russia. Okay, and of course it contains the Donbass area and the uh, 4 provinces, that were annexed, all together, and of course also Kharkov, and Odessa, and the provinces in between. That is all Novorossiya. Became a part of Ukraine through an accident, of history, and since the Ukrainians insisted on fighting the Russians in war, instead of ending the war in April of 2022, which they very well could have, they are now they're in the position of losing 4 more oblasts, not just the 4 they've already lost, but the oblasts beginning with Kharkov and ending in the Odessa area, because that's what's likely to be annexed next if they continue to fight, which of course they're continuing to do, because I have to say, I think that the Polish jokes that people have told for such a long time and are in such bad taste in future years will be replaced by what are essentially Ukrainian jokes, because certainly the foreign policy of Ukraine since the Russian invasion has been totally idiotic and is leading to what may become the extinction of the country, but it's certainly going to lead to a rump state, of Ukraine. Going on with the article. And now they're saying it out loud with no shadow play and coming directly from the head of the CIA, William Burns, who obviously sucks at secrecy. This is what Burns told the members of the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee earlier this week. Quote, I think without supplemental assistance in 2024, you're going to see more Avdiivkas. That's a city which the Russians just took, a very successful campaign. And that, it seems to me, would be a massive and historic mistake for the United States, unquote. That spells out how much the Avdiivka trauma is impressed on the psyche of the U.S. intel apparatus. Yet there's more. Quote, with supplemental assistance, Ukraine can hold its own on the front lines through 2024 and into early 2025. You want to bet? I got to interrupt this to say, you want to bet? I mean, that's not going to happen, folks. It doesn't matter how much assistance we try to send. This war is going to be over in the next 2 to 3 months. Ukraine is going to be totally defeated within that time. I mean, things are breaking across the whole front line right now. Ukraine just doesn't have the forces to hold back the onslaught, of the Russians. Doesn't have the artillery, doesn't have the planes, doesn't have the tanks, it doesn't have the missiles, it doesn't have the drones, it doesn't have the people. It's on the brink of defeat. We know that if we're watching it each day. If we're watching the commentary on it by people like Scott Ritter and Colonel McGregor and Dima at the Military Summary Channel, we know what is going on there, and it's the total defeat, of Ukraine. Why doesn't William Burns know it? Maybe he does know it. Maybe he's just lying to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Ukraine can continue to exact costs against Russia, not only with deep penetration strikes in Crimea, but also against Russia's Black Sea Fleet, unquote. Here we go, Crimea all over again. Burns actually believes that the humongous $60 billion new, quote, aid, unquote, package, which must be approved by the U.S. Congress, will enable Kyiv to launch an offensive, quote, unquote, by the end of 2024. The only thing he gets right is that if there's no new package, there will be, quote, significant territorial losses for Ukraine this year. Burns may not be the brightest bulb in the intel room. A long time ago, he was a diplomat, CIA asset in Moscow. Seems to have learned nothing. Apart from letting cats and kitties galore out of the bag, it's not only about attacking Crimea. This one is being read with supreme delight in Beijing. The U.S. is providing assistance to Ukraine in part because such activities help curb China, unquote. How? How does that curb China? Burns nailed his cat out of the bag Oscar win when he said, quote, if we're seen to be walking away from support for Ukraine, not only is that going to feed doubts amongst our allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific, it's going to stoke the ambitions of the Chinese leadership and contingency ranging from Taiwan to the South China Sea. I have one question for Burns. My question is, if we're seen to be suffering an even more crushing defeat in Ukraine because the war is continuing and 4 more of the oblasts are annexed, and Kyiv is conquered by the Russians, and the government is overturned and replaced with a puppet government in service of Moscow, how is that going to stoke the ambitions of the Chinese leadership in contingencies ranging from Taiwan to the South China Sea? Why doesn't this moron see that the best thing that can be done now is for Ukraine to negotiate a very, very quick peace, giving Russia what it wants? Basically, that's the only way to keep a part of Ukraine even. The very existence of Ukraine is now threatened. Going on with the article, the inestimable Andrei Martyanov perfectly summed up the astonishing incompetence peppered with tawdry exceptionalism that permeates this performance by Burns. I didn't see that video from Andrei Martyanov. I missed something. There are things, quote, they cannot grasp due to low level of education and culture. This is a new paradigm for them. All of them are, quote, graduates, unquote, of the school of beating the crap from defenseless nations strategic studies. And with the level of economic, quote, science, unquote, in the West, they cannot grasp how all this unfolds. So there's a criticism of our economic science, okay, in the West. I doubt that that is aimed at the MMT school, but I think it's aimed at people like Larry Summers and the other neoliberals who are running around spouting nonsense. So what is left is panic, as expressed by Burns in the Senate, mixed with the impotence and understanding, quote, different warrior culture, unquote, such as Russia's. They simply have no reference points. And still, they choose war, as masterfully analyzed by Rostislav Ishenko. Even as the acronym FEST of the CIA and 17 other U.S. intel agencies have concluded in a report shown to Congress earlier this week that Russia is, quote, almost certainly, unquote, seeking to avoid a direct military conflict with NATO and will calibrate its policies to steer clear of a global war. After all, the empire of chaos is all about forever wars, and we are all in the middle of a do or die affair. The empire simply cannot afford the cosmic humiliation of NATO in Novorossiya. And yet, that is exactly what is happening. And that won't be stopped by the 60 billion aid package. Not at all. It won't get there in time. It can't make a difference over the next 2 months. And the next 2 months are critical. Critical. Gee, still, every, quote, plan, unquote, Taurus on Crimea style is a bluff. Russia is aware of bluff after bluff. The Western cards are now all on the table. The only question is when and how fast will Russia call the bluff. All I have to say is, if the West has something up its sleeve, that means it is not bluffing. It had better start to show some of that soon, because I believe that Pepe, is right, that there's nothing but bluff, on the part, of the West. Okay, we still have 3 pieces left. Actually 4, considering the pieces from the cradle. So I think I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave us at this March 15th piece. Tomorrow I will come back and I will do the great March 20th, 23rd, and 26th pieces from Pepe, which would bring us right up to date. I'll leave that for tomorrow night. And I will end this with the piece from the cradle, which is a very, very important piece. So let me share that piece, from the cradle. Let me remove this one and share the piece from the cradle. By the way, that cradle piece is a great one. It's older now, but very relevant. It's from March 15th. The title of it is, Will BRICS Launch a New World in 2024? BRICS doubled its membership at the start of 2024 and faces huge tasks ahead, integrating its newest members, developing future admission criteria, deepening the institution's groundings, and most importantly, launching the mechanisms for bypassing the US dollar in international finance. And this, of course, is by Pepe as well. You are now looking at the article from the cradle. Yes, you are. You're looking at that picture of Putin. And of course, in the graphic, the title BRICS 10++, which refers to the coming further expansion of BRICS. Okay, Moscow. Across the global south, countries are lining up to join the multipolar BRICS and the hegemon-free future it promises. The onslaught of interest has become an unavoidable theme of discussion. I'm going to make the type on this somewhat larger so you can see it better. The onslaught of interest has become an unavoidable theme of discussion during this crucial year of the Russian presidency of what, for the moment, is BRICS 10. Indonesia and Nigeria are among the top tiers of candidates likely to join. The same applies to Pakistan, okay, and Vietnam. Okay, now Pakistan has always been in the American sphere. It has. The idea that Pakistan will join, well, same applies to Pakistan and Vietnam. Uh, but Mexico is in a very complex bind. How to join without summoning the ire, okay, of the hegemon. Then there's the new candidacy on a roll, but Yemen, Ansarallah, which enjoys plenty of support from Russia, China, okay, and Iran. It's been up to Russia's top BRICS Sherpa. Okay, remember the Sherpa, okay, is a guide. Okay, the guides for mountain climbing, okay, in the Himalayas are called Sherpas. So the BRICS has its Sherpas also, its guides to getting people into BRICS. The immensely capable Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov to clarify what's ahead. He tells TASS, quote, we must provide a platform for the countries interested in rapprochement with the BRICS, where they will be able to work practically without feeling left behind and joining this cooperation rhythm. And as to how the further expansion will be decided upon, this should be postponed at least until the leaders convene in Kazan to decide. The key decision on BRICS Plus expansion will only come out of the Kazan summit next October. Ryabkov stresses that the order of the day is first, quote, to integrate those who have just joined, unquote. This means that, quote, as a 10, we work at least as efficiently, or rather more efficiently, than we did within the initial 5. Only then will the BRICS 10, quote, develop the category of partner states, unquote, which in fact means creating a consensus-based list out of the dozens of nations that are literally itching to join the club. Ryabkov always makes a point to note in public and in private that the twofold increase of BRICS members starting on 1st of January 2024 is, quote, an unprecedented event for any international structure. It isn't an easy task, Ryabkov says, quote, last year it took an entire year to develop the emission expansion criteria at the level of top officials. Many reasonable things were developed, and many of the things that were developed back then got reflected in the list of countries that joined, but it would probably be improper to formalize the requirements. At the end of the day, an admission to the association is a subject of political decision. Very smart way to look at it. What happens after Russia's presidential elections? In a private meeting with a few select individuals on the sidelines of the recent multipolar conference in Moscow, you see how tuned in to all the politics of this Pepe Escobar is. He's probably the most tuned in person that we can read here in the West. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov spoke effusively of BRICS, with particular emphasis on his counterparts Wang Yi of China and S. Jaishankar of India. Lavrov holds great expectations for BRICS 10 this year, at the same time reminding everyone this is still a club. It must eventually go deeper in institutional terms, for instance, by appointing a Secretariat General, just like its cousin-style organization, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. The Russian presidency will have its hands full for the next few months, not only navigating the geopolitical spectrum of current crises, but most of all, geoeconomics. A crucial ministerial meeting in June, only 3 months away, will have to define a detailed roadmap all the way to the Kazan summit 4 months later. What happens after this week's Russian presidential elections will also condition BRICS policy. A new Russian government will be sworn in only by early May. It is widely expected that there will be no substantial changes within the Russian Finance Ministry, Central Bank, Foreign Ministry, and among top Kremlin advisors. Continuity will be the norm. That brings us to the key geoeconomics dossier, the BRICS at the forefront of bypassing the US dollar in international finance. Last week, top Kremlin advisor Yuri Ushakov announced that BRICS will work towards setting up an independent payment system based on digital currencies and blockchain. Ushakov specifically emphasized both state-of-the-art tools such as digital technologies and blockchain. The main thing is to make sure it is convenient for governments, common people, and businesses, as well as cost-effective and free of politics, unquote. Ushakov did not mention it explicitly, but a new alternative system already exists. For the moment, it is a closely, carefully guarded project in the form of a detailed white paper that has already been validated academically and also incorporates answers to possible frequently asked questions. The Cradle was briefed on the system via several meetings since last year with a small group of world-class fintech experts. The system has already been presented to Ushakov himself. As it stands, it is on the verge of receiving a final green light from the Russian government. After clearing a series of tests, the system and thesis would be ready to be presented to all BRICS 10 members before the Kazan summit. This all ties in with Ushakov publicly declaring that a specific task for 2024 is to increase the role of BRICS in the international monetary financial system. Ushakov recalls how in the 2023 Johannesburg declaration, the BRICS heads of state focused on increasing settlements in national currencies and strengthening correspondent banking networks. The target was, quote, to continue to develop the contingent reserve arrangement, primarily regarding the use of currencies different from the US dollar. I should remark the US dollar is now down to 58% of the world's trade transactions, still a very high amount. Look for a further great reduction in that percentage in this coming year in 2024. I don't have any inside information on how low that's going to go. I'm just going to guess, but I'd say it's probably going to go down to as low as 42% over the next year. No single currency for the foreseeable future. That's just my intuition, folks. I don't have any real hard stuff behind it. It's just my sense that the BRICS efforts to bypass the dollar are going to be somewhat successful, not completely successful, but somewhat successful, and that's going to result in a big reduction in the percentage, like something like certainly below 50% and maybe as low as 42%. All the above frames the absolute key issue being currently discussed in Moscow within the Russia-China partnership and soon deeper among the BRICS 10, alternative settlement payments to the US dollar, increased trade among friendly nations, and controls on capital flight. Ryabkov added more crucial elements to the debate, saying this week the BRICS are not debating the implementation of a single currency. Quote, as for a single currency similar to what was created by the European Union, this is hardly possible in the foreseeable future. If we're talking about clearing forms of mutual settlements, such as the ECU, the European Currency Unit, at an early stage of development of the European Union, the absence of a real means of payment, but the opportunity to more effectively use the available resources of the countries in mutual settlements to avoid losses to differences due to differences in exchange rates and so on, This is precisely the path along which, in my opinion, BRICS should move. This is under consideration. So no formal currency, but trying to structure forms of mutual settlements, such as the European Currency Union, at an early stage of development, of the European Union, but not the full-blown currency. That is not going to happen, according, to Ryabkov. The key takeaway per Ryabkov is that the BRICS should not create a financial and monetary alliance. They should create payment and settlement systems that do not depend upon the shifty, quote, rules-based international order, unquote. So that's for you, Tony Blinken. That's exactly the emphasis of the ideas and experiments already developed by Minister of Integration and Macroeconomy at the Eurasian Economic Union, the EAEU, Sergei Glasiev, as he explained in an exclusive interview, as well as the new groundbreaking project on the verge of being green-lighted by the Russian government. Ryabkov confirmed that, quote, a group of experts led by the ministries of finance and representatives of the central banks of the respective BRICS countries, unquote, is working nonstop on the dossier. Moreover, there are, quote, consultations in other formats, including with the participation of representatives of the, quote, historical West, unquote. Ryabkov's own takeaway mirrors what the BRICS as a whole are aiming at. Quote, collectively, we must come up with a product that would be, on the one hand, quite ambitious because it is impossible to continue to tolerate the dictates of the West in this area, but at the same time, realistic, not out of touch with the ground. That is a product that would be efficient, and all this should be presented in Kazan for consideration by the leaders. In a nutshell, the big breakthrough may be literally knocking at the BRICS door. It just depends on a simple green light by the Russian government. Now compare the BRICS devising the contours of a new geoeconomics paradigm with the collective West mulling the actual theft of Russia's seized assets to the benefit of the black hole that is Ukraine. Yeah, the theft of, $300 billion of Russian assets. The West is mulling over the illegality of that. How can they somehow rationalize seizing Russia's property, which they've already frozen, of course, but now they want to seize it and give it to Ukraine, as if that's going to help. Maybe they'll seize it and they'll give it to Ukraine, and by that time, the Ukraine they'll want to give it to is a full-blown satellite of Russia, because that's what may happen in the next 2 months if they don't immediately conclude a peace. Apart from being a de facto declaration by the US and EU against Russia, this is something that carries the potential in itself of totally smashing the global financial system. The theft of Russia's assets, would it ever happen, will render livid, to put it mildly, at least two key BRICS members, China and Saudi Arabia, who bring to the table considerable economic heft. Such a move by the West would completely destroy the concept of the rule of law, which theoretically underpins the global financial system. The Russian response will be fierce. The Russian central bank could, in a flash, sue and confiscate the assets of Belgian Euroclear, one of the world's largest settlement and clearing systems, on whose accounts Russian reserves were frozen. That on top of seizing Euroclear's assets in Russia, which amount to roughly 33 billion euros, with Euroclear running out of capital, the Belgian central bank will have to revoke its license, causing a massive financial crisis. Talk about a clash of paradigms, Western robbery versus a global South-based equitable trade and finance settlement system. Now, wasn't that a wonderful piece on the geopolitics and the geoeconomics, as Pepe puts it, that are currently, at issue he's talking about where the rubber meets the road in the geoeconomics conflict that we currently are looking at it. And it looks like the rubber is going to meet the road very, very soon this year. We see the West, Blinken and others, continuing to pressure to try to get a decision to seize the Russian assets. I have not heard anybody else actually mention what happens if the U.S. seizes those assets, to the benefit of Ukraine. The only person I've seen discuss this so far, is Pepe. The only one I've seen actually discuss the possibility, of a massive financial crisis caused by Euroclear, the running out of capital, and the Belgian central bank having to revoke its license. That would be a monumental crash, and it would do severe damage to the financial system, of the collective West. And yet, these boobs are thinking of confiscating the $300 billion worth, of Russian assets. It is just total insanity. So,
There's a lot of insanity going on.
there's a lot of insanity going on. There's a lot more insanity for me to discuss tomorrow. My show. We still have 3 more pieces from Pepe to cover in what's going to be a part 2. We also have something else to cover, which is a move by by Russia, and Yemen and China to have Yemen add hypersonic missiles into their domestic arsenal.
Hmm.
I mean, imagine that happens. Oh, by the way, the United States recently successfully tested the hypersonic missiles that we've been finally developing. Of course, there's still quite a long time until they're put into production, and we actually see that. But at long last, we're getting into hypersonic missiles. I'm glad to see that. I mean, I don't want to see the U.S. at a total military disadvantage. That carries its own risk, of nuclear war. But I don't want to see that. I don't want to see us driven into a position where we would do something foolish. And there's been a great danger of that when only one side has this particular super weapon. So I'm glad we're seeing the United States get that weapon, but it's still going to be some time until we have it, and of course we won't have any means to block the Houthis. But I'll be covering that also tomorrow. And also 3 more pieces from Pepe. The March 20th piece, the March 23rd piece, and the March 26th piece. Also, just to give you a preview, the March 20th piece is about the travels of Pepe, to the Donbass region and to Avdiivka, and to Mariupol. In other words, traveling to those places to talk to the soldiers themselves, and to talk to people who've been fighting the good fight in those areas. Then the March 23rd piece, the title says it all about what this is going to be about. It's war. The real meat grinder starts now. He wrote this on March 23rd, just a few days ago, saying, this now is when the meat grinder really starts. All that has gone before, all the slaughter, okay, is prelude. So that's a devastating piece. And then finally, to bring us up to date with Pepe stuff, the Nuland, Budanov, Tajik, Crocus connection. In other words, Pepe's take on the tragedy that just happened, okay, in Russia, and who's involved, okay, in that particular tragedy. So all those are very, very important things that we will cover tomorrow night. And also, okay, the Ansarallah move will be covered as well in what has become part two of tonight's show. Now I'm going to move to the comments. There are some of those. We have a pretty good crowd here tonight. So I've given my opinion, very superficial opinion, okay, of the VP pick. Steve Wolfbrand says, think China is developing robots at a headlong pace because their birth rate is not keeping up with the aging population. Well, that's an interesting reason for developing it. Steve says Belt and Road is much better than 800 military bases around the globe, in my opinion. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about that, Steve. It's absolutely true. Much better than 800 military bases around the globe. Belt and Road means friends and business, okay, and relations. And that's better than 800 military bases every time. K. Ryan is here and says, hi, D, glad to see you. Steve says, hi, K. Hi, Steve. Andy Kennedy says, go home, Germany. You're always drunk on beer. And Andy Kennedy says, that will mean the Ukraine Nazi transplants to the U.S. because of the proxy war will stay here. I'm afraid so. And he says, oh, no, they need to go home. Yeah, they do need to go home. Joe, do you think the U.S. abstaining their vote is because they're running out of ammunitions, etc.? So what about when Russia proves the Crocus attack was U.S. CIA engineered? I don't know. I hope they do not prove that, because that would be proving a direct attack on Russia by the United States. And Putin might then have to respond. I think in that instance, the smartest thing to do would be to take the matter to the World Court and to take it out of the U.S.'s hide financially. That would take some time, but that would probably avoid, a war. And I think eventually a new U.S. administration would have to get wise, and pay up. Andy Kennedy said his inquiring minds want to know. Laugh out loud. Sorry about all my questions. I love your questions, Andy. Nigeria shouldn't be allowed to join BRICS. They voted against the ceasefire. That pissed me off royal. Well, you have to consider who Nigeria is. At last look, the population of Nigeria was something like 230 million. Its population is larger than Brazil's. It's the largest, in Africa. It dwarfs 213.4 million. So it's about the same, as the Brazilian population. Let me get that. This is oh no, this is Nigeria population as of 2021. I'll get the estimate for 2024. Here it is coming up. 229,152,217. Brazil's population is 217,637,297. So I was right the first time. The population of Nigeria is larger than Brazil's population. Of course, both are roughly speaking 2/3 the population, okay, of the United States. So whether they voted against the ceasefire, okay, or not, if they want to join BRICS, seems to me BRICS has to include them. BRICS first included South Africa as the first of the African nations, okay, to come in, and now have expanded to Ethiopia, okay, and to Egypt, if I haven't forgotten anybody, okay, in the new expansion. But these are not the most important country in Africa. The most important country in Africa is actually Nigeria, and it's inconceivable that they would be left out. Yeah, it was because of pressure from the USA, absolutely. Nigerians want you to know that your car's extended warranty has expired. Yeah. Andy says, the West has no footing, no ingenuity in Anglo nations. The Germans once were a crutch to lean on, but nothing anymore. China is kicking ass everywhere just by itself. I buy fantastic, affordable. And by the way, we've blocked their cars from coming into the United States. Okay, and so we can't get what are apparently very high quality cars for $9,700 here. Now, I might agree with the blocking, but if there's going to be a block in getting them in, there has to be corresponding efforts here to produce cars that are as good in short order. Small items frequently $10 orders. They have a hip wrap for Bonnie for probably under $5 on Temu. Okay, Andy, I don't think Bonnie needs a hip wrap. Okay, at this point, she's had the surgery, and we are using a muscle rub. The active ingredient is THC, in the muscle rub, and it is taking care of her pain fairly nicely at this point. She's taking some Tylenol too, but from a standpoint of stopping pain, the most important thing at this point is the muscle rub and exercise. For the first time this morning, she woke up without any pain, and that was because of the physical therapy and the occupational therapy she got just yesterday. So we're going to continue with that, and I think that pretty soon her pain is going to be a thing of the past. Andy says, I'm getting a sciatica acupressure band for my leg. Have a 0.44 acupressure sinus clip that works miracles, curbs snoring, China wins by strides. Steve said, I had no idea Nigeria has that many people. Yeah, it seems to be a closely guarded secret here in the United States for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I was always aware of Nigeria's very large population, and I always wondered why BRICS was the first African nation, to get invited. I'm glad South Africa was, because, of course, they're very, very important from the standpoint of international law. And they've been wonderful in contesting what is going on, in Gaza. So I'm glad that they were incorporated at first. But their population of roughly 105 million people is dwarfed by Nigeria. THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, the active ingredient in marijuana, Steve. Andy says, happy to know Bonnie is bouncing back so well, smiling. Thank you, Andy. I will tell Bonnie she's left us for the moment to take what is euphemistically known as a bio break. Andy says 0.44 was in cents. Oh, yeah, that's amazing. 44 cents. That is amazing. Sinus clip, 44 cents. Okay, that's amazing. So I think I've done it for tonight. I'll be back with a 9 o'clock show tomorrow night because Dee is doing her special at 7. And most probably will be done by 9. I will try my best to get to Dee's show at 7, but I don't know whether that will be possible since I'm going on at 9 with a long show. But I will try my best since I'm also anxious to talk to Madeline.
Yes, and see how she's doing.
I'm sure that'll be a very good show.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, thank everybody for coming tonight. I see a lot of people have not announced themselves, but are here, and I am glad to see that. And I'm pretty sure I'll be back here tomorrow. If not, okay, I'll be back on Thursday. Andy says she's on the basketball court running layups. Fantastic stuff by Pepe. Just wow. Yeah, wasn't it terrific? And there's more. There's more tomorrow. More tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be wonderful. Now, the VP race, I shouldn't say the VP race, but what Bobby did with his VP choice, we have to evaluate it from the standpoint that that's really going to be game changing. I know it brings a lot more financial power into his campaign. I should mention something very quickly, even though I've been spending a lot of time here tonight. I was looking at some of Bobby's financials here. Okay, now these are here are his donor figures. It's very striking. The Gavin DeBecker Association, based in Kula, Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
That's a securities group. That's where he's getting his security from. It's a widely known association supplying security for Hollywood stars, and other notables. They donated to the American Values 2024 Super PAC. $5.5 million in October 2023 from Timothy Mellon, the Mellon Fortune, coming out of Saratoga, Wyoming. $5 million, October 10th, 2023. Timothy Mellon, again, July of 2023, $5 million. Timothy Mellon, April 13th, 2023. I don't know why it's listed that way, $5 million. Timothy Mellon, January 8th, 2024. That's my birthday. He should have given me that $5 million. Another $5 million. So how many 5 million contributions so far from Mellon? 1, 2, 3, Okay, 4 from Timothy Mellon, 1 from Gavin DeBecker, another one from Gavin DeBecker on June 29th, 2023, $4.3 million. So Gavin DeBecker, almost $10 million, okay, in total. So far, $20 million from Timothy Mellon. Then the Planet A Management LLC, I don't know who that is, but they gave $4 million to Bobby. They're out of Reno, Nevada. I wasn't able to find out who's behind that. Also, Lila Sentner, um, out of Florida, specifically Miami Beach, on July 18, 2023, $1 million. Okay. Then there are smaller donations in the hundreds of thousands, okay, that I'm not going to read. But you can see that the major financial support for the super PAC has come from 2 sources, specifically Gavin DeBecker, the security industry giant, okay, and Timothy Mellon, the financial giant. So he is beholden then largely to 2 people for his financial support. Now, how extensive has his total financial support been? Well, okay, going back to the summary here, he's raised something like $77 million, I believe, so far. For the super PAC, $42.2 million has been raised, okay, so far. $24.1 million was spent. His cash on hand at the end of the period was $18.5 billion. Not his, the super PAC's cash on hand. Okay, then there's Team Kennedy. I'm getting confused here, but somewhere I saw the total. Oh, this is for the PAC profile. That's right. It's not for Bobby Kennedy himself. So I got to go back and get to Bobby Kennedy. It's something like $77 million, and $42 million of that was for the super PAC. And the rest was for Team Kennedy, his campaign. Let me see what I'm getting here. Fundraising totals. Oh, here's the summary I was looking for. Okay, so the outside groups, which is basically the super PAC, raised $44.3 million, as I said. His campaign raised $27.3 million. I was wrong about the $77 million. It was $71.6 million that he's raised so far, which is a substantial amount.
Right.
It doesn't compare to what Trump has raised so far, and especially not to what Biden has raised, okay, so far. But it's a substantial amount of money, unprecedented for an independent candidate. So he is well funded, but largely on the strength of money coming from 2 extremely rich people. He probably has enough money to get on the ballot, okay, in the 50 states. But as far as I can tell, he's not being supported now by the Adelson money. So I think that's important, okay, to note. So having said that, I've digressed, okay, from this. So I'm going to now end, okay, for the night. Good night, everybody. Time for bed, said Steve. Kay says night, Steve. Steve's a billionaire's ex-wife. Zero political experience. Stupid choice. Well, not if he gets... he thinks he's got to raise about 500 million, okay, to win. So I think he's probably right about that, even though the others will probably raise, maybe 2 billion apiece or something like that. 500 million is probably enough to get his message out, okay, even in the face of that. But he's still facing the fact that he needs real financial steam to compete with them. He's not running a full-blown but dump the corruption campaign. He is obviously running the campaign extremely critical of the corporations and the moneyed interests and their control, okay, of the political system. But he's not running the kind of dump the corruption campaign that I think that he needed to run. So Andy Canny says, so Mellon is really the one running for president, Becker, Gavin de Becker for VP. Well, not really, but obviously Bobby's going to owe them a lot. Obviously, he's going to owe them a lot. So Andy says, dump the corruption. Steve says, night K. Andy says, sleep well. Star shines. Okay, Bonnie is back. Are you feeling okay, honey?
Yeah.
Okay. So she's feeling fine. Andy Candy says, laugh out loud. Love it, Steve. Joe, the low-key segment exposes the neoliberals behind the Zionists and the attack against TikTok. Very eye-opening. Thank you, Andy. Andy Candy says, low-key. Okay, I'll get back to Danny at some point. I've been watching some of his stuff in the last few days when I've had some more time. So thank you very much for coming. I loved getting back.
Yes, it's good seeing you again.
Thank you, Dee. It was good to have you join me tonight.
Thank you.
I hope you liked the selections.
Oh, I did, because I really like Pepe Escobar.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
He is, and also, a fan of the Cradle as well. So,
yeah. Okay, folks. Good night.
Yes, good night, everybody.
I'll try my best to see you at 7:00 too, Dee.
All righty, thank you, and good night, Bonnie.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night, everybody. Oh, by the way, okay, don't forget my Patreon account. And don't forget my Buy Me a Coffee or Dee's Buy Me a Coffee account, okay, as well. Those accounts are up on the screen now. Andy says, love having you back. Thank you, Andy, or April. I appreciate it very much. Okay, good night.